Welcome back to the AI Daily Brief Headlines Edition, all the daily AI news you need in around 5 minutes. Today's first story could easily be a full main episode because it is not just a story, it is a major political realignment, but let's talk about it a little bit. The short of it is that the Senate has stripped out a curb on AI regulations from Trump's tax bill. Tuesday night's vote-a-rama on the so-called Big Beautiful Bill sifted through hundreds of amendments to the omnibus funding legislation. Among them was an amendment that removed a 10-year ban on states passing AI regulations. The provision was hugely controversial heading into the vote. It received heavy lobbying support from the tech industry, with Andreessen Horowitz, Palantir, and Anduril among the most outspoken supporters. The argument from AI companies was that the maze of state regulations was impossible to navigate for the fast-growing technology sector. And indeed, various states have already passed more than a dozen different AI laws, with over 1,000 more proposed. AI czar David Sachs and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick were also in favor, arguing that any constraint to AI growth is a national security risk. The president, for his part, had stayed silent on the moratorium. Concerned citizen groups lined up on the other side, arguing that consumer and copyright protections should be paramount. Many made the point that without a federal law in place, AI would be unregulated for the time being. Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee led the drive to scrap the moratorium, acting on behalf of the Nashville music industry. Tennessee recently passed the Elvis Act, which prohibits non-consensual use of AI to mimic musicians' voices, which would of course been one of the laws that would have been blocked. Ultimately, the moratorium on state AI regulations was removed in a 99-1 vote, with support in the Senate collapsing entirely. Even Senator Ted Cruz, who championed the moratorium, ended up voting to remove it after negotiations on a compromise collapsed. Retiring Senator Tom Tillis was the lone vote against the amendment. Now, Tillis has become a bit of a chaos agent since he announced that he won't seek re-election on Sunday. He opposed the larger bill itself and voted against every single amendment, so there's pretty much no signal there. Wired reports that a compromise was basically in the bag over the weekend. It would have cut the moratorium down to 5 years and include a string of carve-outs for consumer and copyright protection. But the reports are that Steve Bannon essentially scuttled the deal from his podcast studio, arguing that, quote, in the first 5 years, they'll get all of their dirty work done. After the votes were cast, Bannon posted, massive win for MAGA over tech bro oligarchs. Celebrating the victory, Brad Carson, the president of AI safety group Americans for Responsible Innovation, said, the moratorium threatened to halt kids' online safety laws, artist and creator protections, and a range of consumer safeguards and tech transparency measures, all without any federal replacement. Let this be a lesson to Congress: freezing state AI laws without a serious replacement is a political non-starter. All right, so let's talk about this for a second. First of all, there are many reasonable debates to be had around the complication of the state and federal system when it comes to emergent technologies. It is absolutely the case that companies having to deal with different regulations in 50 different state jurisdictions can be a huge drag. We've seen this in financial services, we've seen this in lots of other areas before. Point being, you don't have to believe that the technology companies are just trying to get away with never being regulated at all to understand why they would be in favor of this amendment. At the same time, there's probably a pretty reasonable position that the better response than a ban on states regulating is superseding federal regulations that actually create understandable rules of the road, but none of that is what I actually think is interesting about this story. One of the major new groups in Trump's coalition this time was Silicon Valley. And now, post-breakup with Elon, Silicon Valley is once again a complete political orphan. MAGA has completely broken with big tech. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, for example, posted, banning states from regulating AI for 10 years is a gift to big tech and a disaster for American workers and states' rights. And so now we have maybe the weirdest coalition in American political history of AI safetyists on the one hand, MAGA on the other. And if that doesn't say just how chaotic AI is going to make everything, I don't know what does. Speaking of that Elon-Trump breakup, or at least specifically Elon, xAI has closed $10 billion in new funding, but investor enthusiasm seems to be at least a little bit faded. This deal has a troubled history. And the trouble is, of course, directly related to that breakup. At the beginning of June, the Wall Street Journal reported about the pitch meeting where Morgan Stanley was marketing $5 billion in xAI debt. Investors had a split screen reading through some very sparse slides that lacked financial details, while watching Elon Musk set his political career on fire live on X. One detail that was included in the financials is that xAI is apparently now burning $1 billion a month. Now, we know that AI is capital intensive, but there's still a dramatic gap between xAI's expected $500 million in revenue and that significant burn rate. Now, in response to the reporting, Elon Musk said Bloomberg is talking nonsense, but it's hard to tell what's real anymore. Bloomberg is now reporting that 3 additional investment banks were brought into the deal before it closed. Not super unusual, but implying to some that Morgan Stanley perhaps did not have enough takers within their own client base. Now, this could all be nothing. Morgan Stanley said, "This transaction, which was oversubscribed and included prominent global debt investors, reflects confidence in xAI's vision to accelerate scientific discovery and advance humanity's collective understanding of the universe." Still, the debt was priced at around 12% interest, close to the current yield on CCC-rated junk bonds. Lastly, alongside the $5 billion in debt funding, xAI has also closed $5 billion in a strategic transaction. We don't know who that strategic partner is or how the company was valued in the deal, which only adds further questions. The only reason that all of this is notable is that xAI and Elon in general have had absolutely no trouble whatsoever raising funds in the past. Their last round in December raised $6 billion and included a murderer's row of 14 of the largest investors in the world, including Andreessen Horowitz, BlackRock, Fidelity, Kingdom Holdings, Lightspeed, MGX. You get the picture. The only returning name for this deal, at least that we know, is Morgan Stanley, and their only participation was marketing the debt for a fee. And yet, despite all the warning signs, you kind of have to revert to the axiom of never betting against Elon. This is still a gigantic pile of cash that will fund the expansion of the Colossus supercluster and probably see the company through to the end of the year. What's more, fading the intensity of the xAI team does not seem like a winning proposition right now. Pictures are circulating of a tent city inside the company's office as engineers work around the clock to put the finishing touches on Grok 4. Lastly today, speaking of the big labs, Anthropic has hit $4 billion in ARR, but the competition for AI coding is getting more intense. The release of Claude Code has helped Anthropic quadruple their annualized revenue since the beginning of the year. However, their symbiotic relationship with Cursor seems to be turning a little sour. The information reports that 2 key leaders of the Claude Code project have been poached to join Cursor as head of engineering and head of product. They wrote, "The hiring underscores the frenetic nature of talent moves in the AI field this year, which frankly seems like a bit of an understatement." Boris Cherny, the lead engineer of Claude Code, left the company after just 11 months, which people noticed was not even enough time for his equity to vest. McKay Wrigley wrote, "Insane that Cursor saw the rise of Claude Code and went, yeah, let's just hire both Claude Code's lead dev and project manager away from one of the world's biggest AI labs. Absolute monster hires. And a reminder, you can just do things." Talent world continues to be crazy, but for now, that is going to do it for today's AI Daily Brief Headlines edition. Next up, the main episode.